Tiny House Considerations is back. If you're getting serious about tiny house living, then I'd like to invite you to join me and my co-teacher, Lina Menard, in an 8-week online course where you will delve into planning your tiny house from the trailer or foundation all the way up to the roof and everything in between, with a small group of students and me and Lina as your guides. This is the most comprehensive training that I offer for planning and building a tiny house, and students are really loving it. You can learn more about tiny house considerations at thetinyhouse.net/THC. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/THC, which stands for Tiny House Considerations. Class starts on January 6th, and we meet every Thursday for 8 weeks. By the end of the course, you will have filled out your tiny house decisions workbook, picked your appliances, developed a budget, and potentially even started laying out your tiny house. We're offering a generous early bird discount of $100 off registration until November 30th. You can learn more at thetinyhouse.net/THC. The early bird discount will be automatically applied, so don't wait. Head over to thetinyhouse.net/THC to learn more and join us for the January 2022 session of Tiny House Considerations. I hope to see you in class.
So that's what we call Nado Habitat. It's a tiny house that is not on wheel, but that is on a galvanized steel frame, but with no wheels. Basically about the same idea of making each space something valuable.
Welcome to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast, the show where you learn how to plan, build, and live the tiny lifestyle. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and this is episode 191 with Guillaume Gabriele. Guillaume Gabriele is a 27-year-old Frenchman living in the Alps who has been working for the tiny house builder Ma Petite Maison, who is building some of the most beautiful tiny houses in all of Europe. I've been following them for a while, and I'm excited to finally get to sit down with Guillaume to talk about the designs that Ma Petite Maison uses and how they're different in Europe than tiny house designs are in the United States, the state of the tiny house movement in Europe, and his own personal tiny house story, because Guillaume is also living in a tiny house with his wife. It's a great conversation, and I hope you stick around. If you're planning or building a tiny house, you might know that the cost of materials has gone absolutely crazy this year. From plywood and 2x4s to metal roofing and appliances, the cost of materials for your tiny house have gone up across the board. Luckily, today's sponsor, Precision Temp, is offering an opportunity to buy an amazing hot water heater for your tiny house at their pre-pandemic prices. Head over to precisiontemp.com and use the coupon code THLP for an additional $50 off any hot water heater plus free shipping. There's no telling what 2022 might bring, so now is a great time to buy an amazing hot water heater for your tiny house at an amazing price. Again, head over to precisiontemp.com and use the coupon code THLP for $50 off any hot water heater plus free shipping. All right, I am here with Guillaume Gabriele. Guillaume is a 27-year-old Frenchman living in the Alps. After studying marketing for 5 years and completing his master's degree, he had the chance to travel to the United States. During his travels, he realized how much he wanted his day-to-day job to make sense and to participate in making the environment a better place. A few months later, Guillaume began his work with Ma Petite Maison and began his own tiny house project with his wife. After that, he began work with the Tiny Living Alliance and the Francis Brothers Tiny House Community, the Tiny Living Petition, and a global manifesto. Guillaume Gabriele, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ethan. Thank you very much for hosting me.
You're very welcome. So we were chatting before I hit the record button, as I am one to do, and you were starting to tell me about how Ma Petite Maison, the tiny house company, started. So maybe could you start by telling that story?
Yeah, sure. So it all started with a guy named Loïc Boulmot, and he's a guy who has always been aware of what was going on all over the world, talking about housing and especially certain kind of housing like tiny houses or even cocoons in the trees or whatever. And so in 2012, he started his own project. He built his own tiny house in his backyard in his garden. Mm-hmm. And so when that project was ended and was beautiful, he thought I should start a company because there are not a lot of companies. Well, there are none companies in France building tiny houses. And so that's how Ma Petite Maison was born in 2014. So it was 2 years after he started his tiny house project. And so, yeah, Ma Petite Maison is one of the 3 companies who has first built tiny houses in France around 2014.
And how, between 2014 and now, how do you know roughly how many tiny houses the company has built?
Yeah, so Ma Petite Maison has built some tiny houses and that also has distributed some tiny houses. And it's about between 100 and 120 tiny houses we have been able to deliver all over French country. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so are you working just in France, or are your tiny houses going outside of France to the rest of Europe?
Mostly in France, but everywhere in France, also French-speaking countries like Belgium and Switzerland. And we have some projects going on in Denmark or some other European Union countries. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. So Ma Petite Maison has made some of the most iconic tiny houses that I've seen from Europe. I'm curious, since you did have a chance to travel in the United States, what do you see as some of the differences between the European or French tiny house designs and what you see in the United States?
Well, of course, I'm in love also with the American style because it's different, I think, because of the drivers, because of the fact that a tiny house on wheels go on the road. In France, the regulation is very strict, so it makes them very tiny, very tiny. But it's gorgeous, and it makes them very cozy, and you feel like in the Alps in a small house.
Yeah.
And in the States, you can see like huge trailers, like maybe 10 people can sleep in that tiny house. Or now that's extreme, but you can see some 3 wheels tiny houses. And in France, we don't have that. We have 2 wheels. 4 wheels versus 6.
Two axles.
Yeah. Mm-mm. And in the US, you can have 3, right?
Right. So what are the weight restrictions in Europe or in France?
Yeah, in Europe, it's 3.5 tons.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And so I'm gonna quickly Google that. 3.5. Yes. Those are metric tons.
Yeah, I had prepared that, but I closed all my windows. Okay. So sorry.
No, that's okay. It looks like it's about 7,700 pounds, 7,700 pounds, which is definitely, that has to be a pretty small and light tiny house. For comparison, the tiny house that I built is on a 22-foot trailer.
Okay.
And it weighs about 10,000 pounds. So I would be slightly overweight for Europe.
Out low. Yeah.
So that must be a real challenge because it is cold in France, especially in the Alps. It's you guys have winter just like we have, but to make a house that light, you must have to use extremely light materials.
Mm-hmm. It is the challenge for us, tiny houses on wheels. Because we want to have a wooden structure and ecological. For the environment to have a insulation that is good, but also good for the environment. So it's really a big challenge.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting to me that in the United States, because there aren't the same restrictions, tiny houses have gotten bigger and bigger. And it's not uncommon to build a tiny house on a trailer that's 30 to 40 feet long. And in Europe, where there are these restrictions, it forces you to be more creative in a way in the design and in the material choice. And, I still interact with people. There are people in my online community who still want to build small. Like they want to be able to tow it. They want to be able to travel. And I think that it would be instructive to look toward Europe to see how you are meeting those challenges. Are there any things you can share, like specifically, like either materials or construction techniques that you've found work really well?
Yeah, so there are different types of wood for the exterior and also for the structure. And I think this is something really important to think about when building a tiny house in Europe, because that is what would weigh very much. And also the trailer itself, you have to take it very, it has to be strong, but it has to be light too. And that could give you maybe 600 kilos, which is, I think, about 2,000 pounds or maybe 1.8. And that would be the first thing to think of. Structure, exterior wood, and also the trailer will give you some weight to put stuff in the tiny house, like nice furniture, etc.
Yeah. Are you using aluminum trailers?
It's inox. Do you say inox?
Inox.
Inox. It's iron.
Okay,
iron. Maybe
okay.
and iron, but with it's it's gray and very. It can't be.
It's galvanized. It looks like galvanized steel.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have
No, that's okay.
Words.
I was curious because it hasn't really caught on here very much to use aluminum for the trailer, even though they are a bit light. Aluminum is lighter and won't rust. It's just quite a bit more expensive. So when I saw the lighter steel, I thought that might be aluminum, but it looks like it's galvanized steel then. And then in terms of the insulation and kind of what's inside the walls, one thing that's been popular here in the US is, if you are trying to save a lot of weight, is to use metal framing, steel studs. But it sounds like you're just using, you're sticking with wood framing.
Yes, and more we can see designs of tiny houses, and my own tiny house, which arrived 10 days ago, has some iron or metal framing to gain on weight and also on insulation.
Yep. Looking at the Ma Petite Maison website, I was looking. You have a page for the tiny houses on wheels. And then there are the garden models, or the nano habitat. What is the nano habitat, and can you describe it for our listeners?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So the tiny houses on wheels, we say it's mobile, and so for people who don't need to be to be mobile, they just need sometimes to be able to move their habitat. And so that's what we call nano habitat. It's a tiny house that is not on wheel, but that is on a galvanized steel frame, but with no wheels.
Okay.
And it's basically about the same idea of making each space something valuable for the user, for the guy who lives in this habitat.
Got it. Okay. So it's a tiny house that is movable, but doesn't have wheels attached to it ever. Or so when it's moved, is it brought up onto a trailer?
Exactly. Yeah, on a truck.
Okay.
It's on a
Okay. And what are the rules in France around living in a tiny house on wheels versus one of these garden habitats or nano habitat?
Yeah. So then everything that is not on wheel, we can have a law or have something that regulates it. And so it is called habitat léger, which means light habitat, because it has no foundations and it doesn't insulate the soil. It doesn't make it, it leaves it permeable. The water can flows into the ground. And so this is something that is recognized by the state. And but in many of the counties in France, you can't put that kind of habitat. It is written black and white, and we don't know really why. But for the tiny house on wheels, it really depends on what you do with it. If you live in it as a permanent habitat, there's no, like, the state doesn't know how to put it. Is it a light habitat? Is it a caravan or a trailer? Is it an RV? They don't know where to put it. And so legally, you can't live all year long in a tiny house on wheels on somewhere in France. That is the complicated part. But to make it simple, it really depends on the project and where you are in France, because you can, and you have to go and see the mayor and also the neighbors to say, hey, I have that kind of habitat. These are the advantages of it. And I would really like to be on your piece of land. Do you agree?
Yeah. Does that, what's the success rate of that?
1 out of 10. And I would say that, 90% of the people who actually build or buy a tiny house on wheels, they go as pirates.
Okay.
Lands, without saying anything to anyone and just waiting for someone to knock on the door. And
yeah, that's I'm familiar with that as well. Unfortunately, that's the reality still for most people living in a tiny house, I would guess. That they're doing it under the radar or not, not telling. I like that, as pirates.
Yeah.
Pirate tiny house dwellers.
It's very encouraging to see in the US that a lot of communities are being created and growing.
Yeah.
And we can see that in France too. There are associations and communities that create some 10 tiny houses on a piece of land, and it becomes legal. And
yeah. So what is the current status of the broader tiny house movement in terms of, is there any advocacy to change laws and do this on a higher level rather than on this town by town, piece by piece basis?
This is the mission we have with Ma Petite Maison.
Okay.
Because first in 2014, we have created tiny houses. And now in 2021, we want to popularize the movement and to make it legal and to have things going clear from the governments. And that's why we have joined the Tiny Living Alliance, Jan and Miranda, and also with Betsy and the Francis brother and Loretta, with the tiny house community. We are writing a manifesto, and also we want to work on a petition. And we really want to say, we believe this and this, and we also believe that it's not the only answer, and we don't want to be exclusive, but we want to say, hey, governments, look at this. This is a solution for poor people to access property, or people that are maybe have a handicap to live close to their family. And it's really something you should look at and legalize and use. And so I don't know if it answers the question, but
yeah, absolutely. So starting with a manifesto just to galvanize people together, to consolidate support.
Yep.
And I actually just interviewed Jan and Miranda, and I think their episode is going to come out this Friday, so November 12th. So by the time people hear this, they'll be able to hear the interview
with
Jan and Miranda. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So we just learned about Tiny Living Alliance and what they're doing. Let's face it, most tiny house dwellers want their homes to be small, but not uncomfortable. That means reliable, unlimited hot water. Precision Temp's propane-fired hot water heaters reliably provide unlimited hot water, and they're specifically designed with tiny homes in mind. In fact, the NSP 550 model was installed in my own tiny home, and the reason I chose it was because it did not require a large hole in the side of my home like other RV hot water heaters. Instead, it mounts discreetly through the floor of the tiny house and works quietly and reliably. Precision Temp has also made the amazing Twin Temp Junior propane tankless water heater, which can provide unlimited hot water for your tiny house and hydronic heating. This means you get warm, cozy, heated floors, and it's designed specifically for tiny houses. Precision Temp is offering an opportunity to buy an amazing hot water heater for your tiny house at their pre-pandemic prices. Just head over to precisiontemp.com and use the coupon code THLP for $50 off any hot water heater plus free shipping. Again, that's precisiontemp.com using the coupon code THLP for $50 off any hot water heater plus free shipping. Thank you so much to Precision Temp for sponsoring our show. And so in your bio, you mentioned that you actually have a tiny house. Are you in your tiny house right now?
It's not my tiny house, but it's
Okay.
the tiny house of Ma Petite Maison.
Okay.
And it's a demo tiny house, but
Okay. But you also are living in a tiny house?
it's been 10 days now.
Wow.
I'm not the happiest, but probably one of the happiest person on earth living in a tiny house. Yeah, I really live in paradise. I'm at the farm and I have mountains, snowy mountains just in front of my tiny house, and horses and cows and awesome people. So it's just, yeah, great.
That sounds. Are there other tiny houses at this farm?
Yep. So we were one of the first going to see the farmer and saying, we have a tiny house, we want to come on your land. And he was like, yeah, of course. So that
Cool.
was awesome. And then after us, maybe 30 or 40 people called the guy saying, yeah, we've heard about your, we don't know why, because we never promoted it or whatever, but yeah. And so we have a neighbor, really cool lady that is living also in a tiny house. And so we are 2 tiny houses on that farm.
Fantastic. And so are you completely off grid in your tiny house, or is it hooked up to, yeah?
It was prepared to be off grid, but we want to try things little by little. And so we are hooked at the farm. We have water and we have also electricity.
Mm-hmm.
But when we will be fully set up in the tiny house, we will buy solar panels and some batteries and start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And just maybe to have 50 or 30, even 30% of our consumption that is on batteries.
Yeah.
And yeah, test things.
How is your tiny house heated?
Well, for now it's electricity.
Okay.
But it's a very efficient, and I can program it so, and it doesn't have to be very hot, like in Celsius. Sorry, I don't know the Fahrenheit, but in Celsius it's like 17 degrees, and we are doing good. Whereas in a house, normal house, we will be 20 or 21.
Yeah. So again, quick Google here. 17 degrees Celsius is 62 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I would say that is chilly to set your heat to. But it is, you do make a good point. If the house isn't drafty, if it's tight and you're not feeling that cold air blowing from the windows and the doors, you can get away with a lower temperature. So I'm guessing, is the heat a heat pump? Is it a mini split heat pump? Or is it?
No, this one is a radiant. It's
okay.
Yeah.
An electric radiant. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. I know that heat pumps are starting to get very popular here, but I know that they have been used more in Europe for longer.
We can put that on a tiny houses on wheels, and it's very efficient too. But yeah, we chose not to because we wanted to get rid of the electricity one day, and so we didn't want a big installation.
Got it. So would you do like a wood stove, or how would you heat if you got rid of the electricity?
I'm still trying to think of it.
Yeah.
I would love to have floor heat,
Ah.
either with water, that would be my hot water for the shower and the dishes, for example,
Uh-huh.
or a radiant floor heat, but with on solar panels. So and that will have some inertia. That means it doesn't takes a lot of energy at once, but it's going slow, and yeah, more efficient.
Right. Right. The radiant floor, thermal mass kind of heat. Nice.
Yep.
So were you involved in building your tiny house?
Unfortunately, not.
That's okay.
Yeah. But with the farmer, we want to, now that we live on the same piece of land. We have the project one day to start and try things also. But yeah.
And is your house on a trailer on wheels, or is it a garden habitat style?
No, it's on wheels.
Okay,
Yep.
on wheels. Nice. And do you have an idea of how long you want to live there? Like
Forever.
All right.
No.
Nice.
Now we can see clear that we won't be there forever, but as long as possible. It could be 1-2 years, or it could be 10 years. We don't know what life will bring.
Okay.
But yeah, we are doing good there, and we think we want to set a little bit, because we have been traveling a lot and living 6 months here and 2 months here. So
yeah,
we want a bit of stability.
Nice. Can you tell me more about Tiny Living Petition?
Sure. So it's really a project that we have been creating with the Tiny Living Alliance.
Uh-huh.
It was, we thought in order to have something that makes sense, we can't write a petition or write something ourselves and then ask people to sign it. We wanted to do it the other way around, like put something, a website, and also with the manifestos that will be an introduction and that will guide people and set a framework saying we are in that framework, and then we ask you to participate and to tell us what would be the points that you would like our governments to read and to statutes on. And then you can sign it. So there are different steps. And so, yeah, we thought, we don't know if it will work, or if one day we will send it to governments, but the goal is to involve, people can be involved in that project. And it's more root grass, how you call that? When it comes from the people.
Grassroots.
Yeah, thanks. It comes from the people, and it's held by many, because we can't hold it with our own hands. It's held by many, and people are involved in it. And this petition for us, if it's a success, it will be with all the participants.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, it sounds like things in Europe are progressing. Like it's behind where it is in the United States, but you're getting organized, and you're going to start kind of lobbying for this change. Does Ma Petite Maison have any exciting projects or anything new that you can tell us about coming up?
We just had a big thing that went out as our new graphic identity, and also we have our own manifesto.
Okay.
And we really, this past 6 months, I've been working a lot for this with an agency, specialized agency. Uh-huh. And we are very proud now to be able to be more clear about who we are and where we want to go. And also because we want our customers and also our community to follow us on purpose.
Yeah.
To think, I follow Ma Petite Maison because I believe in their project and I agree. And even if I'm not a customer, I want to encourage this. So this is the big project we've been working on.
Very nice. Very nice. That's exciting. Congratulations. The website looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much.
And even Google Translate isn't breaking it too badly, so I can read it in English.
Yay! That's good news. I wanted to try, but I don't have the tool to the VPN or so. Thanks for this feedback.
I can send you a link so you can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing that I wanted to ask about, just building tiny houses in Europe is, are people able to get loans? Like, are there any banking options, or is it like here still hard to get a loan for a tiny house?
Very hard. It's one of the things we have been working on, is to have some partners who we can say we are holding this project, and so you can have confidence in this project. There is a company behind, not only a person, and also to educate them, to say it's not an RV, or RVs are very cool. I'm not saying that, but it's a real house. What I mean is, like, if you give money to someone to buy this house, it will be his house. And I don't know how to say that, but it's hard in France to have contact with the bank and for them to understand. And Ma Petite Maison is trying to have more and more partners, bank partners, to educate them, for them to know what is a tiny house, and for people to be able to have contacts of people who know what is a tiny house and who will agree or not to set a loan, but it will be on other criteria than just, I don't know what it is, I don't want to finance it.
What kind of interest are you seeing in terms of demographics in France? Like the age of people who are looking at tiny houses, and also are they urban in cities or rural in the countryside? Or
what I really deeply love about tiny houses on wheels, or tiny houses even not on wheels, is that it could correspond to everyone at a certain time and for a certain project. But like we have some customers that are retired people and they want it for their own habitat, or we have also families that have children that have a handicap, and they have it in their backyard. And so that's what I like, is also that some people from the city want to go away from the city, and that's what we did with my wife. We were in Lyon, and then we live in a farm in the countryside. But we have really all the spectrum of ages and also different regions and projects.
Very cool. So it sounds like it cuts across lots of different demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I like to ask all of my guests is, are there, 2 or 3 resources? So it could be books or videos or people, just things that have inspired you in your tiny house journey that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So my wife and I, we well, it's not a famous people because it's my wife's dad, but it's him who made us discover the tiny houses on wheels.
Okay.
And it was maybe a year and a half ago. And then a couple of months later, the owners of Ma Petite Maison called me to say, hey, do you want to join? And I was like, oh, I just discovered the tiny house, of course.
Yeah.
And then we thought, well, why not living in our own tiny house? And so, that's how. And we had the chance to interview some people, and these videos are on YouTube. It's in French. I'm sorry, and I haven't translated it, the subtitles yet. But Maxime and Fantine, I really want to thank them, because we have spent 2 evenings with them interviewing, asking a lot of questions for us, but also for the community that follow us, to be able to know more about their project.
Okay.
And it really was, we had some questions like for the dry toilets, for example, or, some really precise questions like that. We were, oh, this is disgusting, and they were like, no, look, it's not. Oh, so it's more people, and also, of course, videos of tiny house Livingstone. That is, I think that they are French people, but also some videos on YouTube of people describing their life in a tiny house. This is really motivating, and also it shows, because sometimes they say winter is not fun for us. This winter was not fun because of this and this, and then so we can say in our tiny house we will think of it, and yeah, those are the resources.
That's great. Well, I'm not sure. YouTube might automatically do translated captions. I'm not sure how well that works, but I'll cool. Check it out. And if they do, well, either way, I'll put the video. We'll find the video and put it on the show notes page for the episode. And actually, you mentioned one other thing that I wanted to ask about, which is the toilets. Are people using the compost toilets in tiny houses there mainly? Yeah.
Some of them have the separate thing but most of our customers have just it's an iron, like galvanized iron bucket, and just with wooden pieces and compost.
The sawdust,
works.
Amazing. Well, good to know that compost also works in Europe.
Yep. Is it what most people in the US use also?
Yeah. I think that it seems that many people have switched to using what I call a commercial compost toilet. So the Separate or Nature's Head or Sea Head, which are more just collectors. There's not usually much cover material like sawdust that you put in, but it's essentially the same thing. My tiny house uses the bucket and sawdust, and I think that's, in a lot of ways, that's the best. Simple.
It's just simple, and no problems, no mechanic, no just
right. Yeah. You don't want something that can break when you're going to the bathroom in it, because that would be gross. Well. It's a strange place to leave it, but Guillaume Gabriele, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. It was great to speak with you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on the show and for asking all this question. I'm very happy to be part of the communities and to be able to talk about this topic that makes me really I love this topic. Yep.
Thank you so much to Guillaume Gabriele for being a guest on the show today. You can find the show notes, including a complete transcript, links to Ma Petite Maison, and some photos of my favorite designs of theirs at thetinyhouse.net/191. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/191. Don't forget to check out precisiontemp.com to learn more about their amazing hot water heaters, and use the coupon code THLP for $50 off any hot water heater plus free shipping. Well, that's all for this week. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.